Hi, and welcome to episode 15 of Differential Diagnosis, where we'll be differentially diagnosing Season 1, episode 16 of House MD, called Heavy. My name is Harvey, I'm one of your co-hosts, and your other co-host is Gaz.
Hey, a pleasure to be here. Ready to analyse this glorious and unforgettable episode.
Yep, making it sound like that's not sarcastic, Gaz, when I know you actually like it.
Well, yeah, I'm just subverting expectations.
There you go. You're making it seem like they're not in for a good time, and then you're going to deliver.
Yeah, and if I don't, then it sounds like I'm telling the truth.
There you go. Fantastic.
Or am I? Everybody lies.
So, yeah, Heavy. I mean, because we are like normal people, we share our views about the episode before we get started. And I think just to set expectations, we both agree that this is a pretty damn good, solid episode, right?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think once we get into the meat of the episode, we'll be able to kind of convey why. But the premise...
Hopefully.
Well, yeah, I know I'm kind of stating the obvious, right? But, yeah, I don't have anything really to say until we get into it. It's just a good episode. It kind of touches on everything that's going on with the tensions between Vogler, or as you call him, Vogler. It also has a bit of hammering in it. Which I guess is like the fantasy dream couple that everybody wants in House MD, I guess.
Yeah, which I've always found very strange. Like, I kind of got House and Cuddy.
Yeah.
But anyone who wanted House and Cameron, like, Cameron is a lot younger than House.
Yeah.
Which I personally always found a bit weird. But I totally get it. If others might want to see that, but I think that they are a totally horribly ill-fitting couple. And I know that they're kind of like, I know that the producers aren't forcing anything. They're just like treating it like, oh, this is a situation that has emerged because of House's character traits and her character traits. But it's kind of, I do remember seeing a lot of creepy fan stuff around the time when they were like really wanted this relationship to work, and it's like I never got it. I never got who was trying to push that narrative, and I'm glad that they never went as far with it as they could have and became really fan servicey. It's one of the good things about the show; it doesn't really give into fan service that much.
No, I don't think really at all. Unless you think there are some examples.
Well, this is the thing. I don't have behind the scenes like knowledge, but Huddy was such a big thing that a lot of people wanted, and I think Huddy was handled very well. But I do have a suspicion that was kind of put into the show because fans wanted to see it.
Yeah.
And I can totally see how the creators might have been like, oh, you know what, the fans want to see this. You know, maybe it could be an interesting romance to explore. And even though I think it's done well, it is still, I think, potentially that kind of stuff is giving into fan service. And also, we'll see it as we get there. But I mean, season 1 House compared to the rest of like the later seasons of House, like in terms of House, the character, I really think he starts to become a very wacky at points. I think that's like fan service as well. I think like the fans' idea of who House is definitely might start to bleed into the show slightly.
Okay. That'll be an interesting...
Unless you don't feel that way. Those are the two big examples I have.
That'll be an interesting hypothesis to kind of see play out, whether you feel that's something that happens or not. Whether that's a good or a bad thing.
I don't want to say that those things are just fan service, because obviously, you know, the creators are fans of their own show. When you're sitting around in a writer's room, you come up with ideas, right?
Yeah.
And fan desires don't come from nowhere. Like fans, when a fan wants something to happen in a show, they're basically hypothesizing, oh, that could be something interesting. I'd like to see it, which is basically how writers come up with ideas, right?
Yeah.
So I can never prove how much the fans actually influence the show, but I feel like it does at sometimes. Some points start coming in.
Yeah.
But anyway, my point with Hammering is that doesn't happen, which is good.
Yeah. Thankfully, I think that would have been one of the more insufferable partnerships in television history because it
Yeah.
just wouldn't make any sense.
Well, yeah, they have nothing in common, which is obviously pointed out as the relationship goes on. But it's yeah, it's nice. It's nice that it's emerging around now, especially with the situation that like Cameron's job is on the line. And it's at this point where everyone kind of... I don't think Cameron's like telling him like how she has feelings to manipulate him. I think that this is kind of the all or nothing moment where it's like Cameron can be a very emotional person.
Yeah.
And, you know, to her, it's like, wow, you know, I might be losing my job. I might be losing my chance to work with House. This is when I should really express myself.
Yeah.
So it's a very fitting time for these kind of things to come out. This is basically like the the House equivalent of, you know, the chasing through the airport scene in a rom-com. Where you get one shot, one last chance.
One last roll of the dice.
Exactly. It's time to do it.
I think the other thing we need to touch upon is we're still in the thick of the Vogler fest.
Yeah. Number 3 of the quintology.
And, you know, Vogler has put his cards down on the table and said, you better make this down department profitable. One of you's got to go. House goes, hey, let's do some job cutting or salary cuts, make it work. That's not what it's about. It's about Vogler making House eat shit.
Yeah, well, this episode, like, obviously we'll get to it, but the kind of control theme which was set up in Control, it's actually taken quite a long time for this to pay off, because even though Vogler's like motivations for wanting to force House to do stuff is obviously just about control, the show does kind of keep it under wraps. It's like, oh, is this about money? Is this about efficiency? And in this episode, we finally do get that payoff that Vogler admits it is all about control, and it's quite nice to see that payoff.
Yeah,
I think the Vogler arc is, you know, although forced on the writers, I still think it's being handled very well. And Vogler remains an extremely sleazy and unlikable character throughout.
Hey, he's not evil. He's not a bad person.
He's just rich.
He's just rich.
As he says creepily.
To Cameron, one half of the love duet of Cameron.
Absolutely. Well, it's not really. It's not a duet. It's a dot. It's a love dot. It doesn't go anywhere.
It's just a fixed point in space, and it's isolated from everyone else. And that fixed point is just Cameron thinking about, oh, I wish House would love me.
I want to fix him.
Yeah, sure.
So we've got well, we've been over the main points then. So Gaz, why don't you give us an explicit synopsis of the episode, and then we'll get cracking.
Oh wait, one more thing I want to do before I introduce the episode.
There you go.
Honourable mention to Chase for being the biggest dick in this episode. He is truly, you cannot sympathise with his position in this. He's so unsympathetic as a character.
Yeah, he is deeply unpleasant in this, and we'll get to it, but I do wonder how. I don't know, like there's a lot going on in the situation. Maybe he's stressed, but he is like strangely aggressive about this subject.
Yeah.
And I get it if he was just mentioning it, but I'm not sure if he's trying to stir something up. But yeah, the way he approaches the subject of childhood obesity, like he suddenly becomes very impassioned about something. And I get, like, they kind of go into like looks and how, Chase is a good looking guy. He might be very focused on looks for that reason. It's like, it's a big part of his life, I guess, in that way. But yeah, he really hates this small child for being slightly overweight. She's like not even that bad. So
Well,
yeah, Chase is a bit weird in this one, but yeah, he is quite unpleasant.
she's
Vogler
clinically
levels of unpleasant.
she's definitely obese, and they say that within the story.
Yeah, heavy.
She's
heavy.
heavy. But the other thing that gets me is Chase was so sympathetic to other patients of various different kinds of background.
Yeah.
From different backgrounds, and all of a sudden someone overweight comes in, he's like, I'm not going to care or give any compassion to this individual.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's such a strong prejudice. It has there is no real explanation of that prejudice. It's like he's out trying to outhouse house.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and if it was a 40-year-old, maybe, but she is a child and he's like all snarky to her. It's like, what?
Yeah. And then Foreman.
But it does have an impact on the rest of the fellows.
Yeah.
And in fairness, it does go somewhere. But I wonder if they made Chase purposely unpleasant in order to turn the team against him.
It would have been more like Foreman's forte, being so neurotic about everything. But he was, funnily enough, very sympathetic and kind of like, hey, engaging with the patient.
Yeah, I actually agree. I think, like, this has happened a few times where, like we saw with the pharmaceutical rep.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's other instances, but I can't remember them, is when they kind of flip between the characters to make them have a problem with certain things, which I guess is a good way to give certain members of the team something to do. But it would be nice if it was more consistent, because I kind of agree. I do think Foreman would probably be the more judgmental one.
Yeah.
Like, I'd say Foreman's probably more obsessive about, like, trying hard and, like, pursuing things. And he has gone through a bit of an arc there, but I think if there was anyone who was going to, like, have a go at bad parenting, it would be Foreman. And Chase is a bit more laid back, so I think Chase would probably be the nice one, because he's certainly been nice to children throughout. Like, he's been very, very nice. Like, if there's anybody who's had a nice moment with the child patients, it's actually been Chase pretty consistently. But he just turns on this little girl just because she's a bit overweight. So
because in histories, Foreman is completely unsympathetic to the homeless person. It's just like, let's bounce her, get her out. Don't want anything to do with this person.
Which is entirely, he's like, what a lazy bum.
Yeah. Happen to have rabies.
Yeah, and he like, I agree. I think that's a good point. I think Foreman probably would have been a better character for this, but they went with who they went with, and I suspect it was a way to get the team to turn against Chase, which they probably could have found a better way of doing, because Chase is way too ridiculous in this, and
yeah.
Not only is it weird that Chase even feels this way, it's weird that Chase feels this way so strongly.
The other interesting thing to point out is that it's part of a regular theme. Well, mechanic, actually. It's a regular mechanic of the show, which is to utilize characters and to instrumentalize them to take a particular position, and then use them to basically hash out the arguments between certain issues, like for and against, or sympathetic or unsympathetic, which is quite interesting because it can jar with what we perceive the character to be, which might be a good thing, because it then says, hey, maybe these characters have more depth to them in the sense of their prejudices or what they feel compassionate about.
Yeah, entirely. I mean, people can be hypocrites. I totally agree with you on that. And the show we've talked about it before, and the show has done that before.
Yeah, it's a writer's mechanic, I think.
Yeah.
Of going, here's the thesis, here's the antithesis, let's like hash it out. And kind of like the courtroom example we used in the previous Vogler episodes, where we were looking at the analogy of a courtroom to discuss Vogler and Cuddy's discussions regarding House. His House was on trial, in a sense. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's one thing to always be mindful of, is that sometimes the writers utilize characters, especially the fellows, as a means to interrogate a certain subject matter, and sometimes that means making jarring statements for the character to say that kind of rub against what we or who we think they are, or what their beliefs are. So yeah, so that was my only thing. I wanted to just make honourable mentions to Chase for being a dick and Foreman for being surprisingly compassionate to this patient.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's interesting you mention histories. It's very similar. It's like somebody has an irrational hatred of a person, and then the person who you don't think would feel that way is like, nah, they're good.
Yeah. So what?
Good setup. But this obviously, this has more going on than histories and like the grander plot. So
yeah,
more engaging, I think, for that reason. But we will get to it once you read the old wiki synopsis.
Yeah, so as always, this synopsis is powered by the House Wiki at house.fandom.com. And here we go. Heavy.
Great resource.
Yeah, it is a fantastic resource. So much knowledge to be found. Okay. Heavy is a first season episode of House which first aired on March 29th, 2005. A morbidly obese 10-year-old girl has a heart attack. House is intrigued, but the obvious cause of her problems seem to be her weight, and Chase won't stop mentioning it. Can the team look through her appearance to see the real cause?
Yes.
Yes. All right.
Yes, they can.
All right.
Well, that was a lovely 10-minute intro for you. Now let's get to the actual episode.
Ooh,
this is Season 1, Episode 16, Heavy. So I think, just as a cold open, I'll say right away, I think this is one of those, I think they're really getting the hang of these cold opens at this point in the season. Like, This is yeah, sure. I mean, I know last week I was saying, it's like, it's, I hate the ones where it's just a family and then someone's sick.
Yeah.
But this is like an interesting setup, right? This is a girl who's morbidly obese. She's young. We get the impression that she's totally self-loathing. Like there's a really heartbreaking opening where she's just crying about how horrific she is.
Yeah.
And how much she hates herself. And then she goes to school and has a heart attack while like all these children are laughing at her. Like in terms of like just really sad cold opens with like an interesting premise. I think this one does it really well. This strikes a very good balance between like having an interesting cold open where the characters are instantly engaging, but without making it really high concept, like it's the mob or something.
Yeah.
Because I can totally see how the show, I love the high concept ones where it's like, a mob informant, but they can they could have gotten really ridiculous. Like what's stopping them having like an astronaut in space? I mean, I actually think one of the later episodes, I think it's in season 8, there's like 2 people in like an Antarctic like research facility, which is possibly where the high concept goes a bit far for me. But I think this one strikes a nice balance between normalcy and high concept.
Yeah, and also the interesting thing is a child is being portrayed in a fairly kind of positive light. She's got emotional depth. She's not a moron.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Or do you think actually she was a totally like normal looking child and David Shaw went, make her fat And everyone was like, why? And he's like, just make her fat. I hate kids.
Whereas the kids are talking about her are complete douchebags.
They are.
And the adult goes, you're going to run a few laps for that transgression.
And also, you know what? The children in this are quite well written. Like, they're not... I think in Curse, like, the kids were very douchey in that kind of, hey, man way. But, like, you know, she's jumping and she's like, oh, I don't feel so good. And that kid says, how do you think the ground feels? And it's like, that is exactly something that a pretty sharp 10-year-old might come up with.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was a very, like, the children don't seem ridiculous in this. And I wonder if that's the directing or the writing or maybe the acting. Like, maybe the child actors are better. But I found the children a lot less noticeable in this opening.
Yeah, a lot less, that is so annoying that you've written them so simplistically. Also, the mum is well acted as well. Because she's trying to be compassionate and trying to be understanding and kind of conveys that backstory that they've really worked hard to kind of mitigate the issues that she has.
Yeah, completely.
And sees beyond her looks. Also, very good work on the makeup for this because they obviously use some sort of fat suit and makeup to do the face as well.
Yeah, I thought the fat suit was really impressive because I just assumed that was the actress and you wouldn't see her again. But you do later see her after she's lost weight, which is that she's taken off the fat suit. The fat suit is surprisingly good.
Yeah, you do a good job.
Actually, you know what? Just on the cold opens thing.
Yeah.
So one thing I really like about early seasons of House is like on the Antarctic thing and the more high concept the episodes go as they sort of like, you know, try and keep the show fresh.
Yeah.
What I like about the opening series, and I've kind of started noticing it as we watch it, is it does just feel like watching people at work.
Yeah.
I don't know if you feel that, but I remember really enjoying the show for something like that. I remember finding the show quite comforting, like to watch. I found it quite relaxing.
Oh.
And I'm starting to think that it's because it like feels like you're actually watching people at work who have like an interesting job. I don't know why I always felt that, but it's definitely something I've noticed going back to it and watching it again from the older seasons.
I have yet to form that opinion, and as I'm going through these episodes, they do try and emphasize the world that they occupy seems very weighty in the sense that they have a lot to do. It's really serious.
But like, you know, they're in the office, like someone's grabbing a drink in the back, someone's making a coffee. Like it feels like a kind of nice office that you'd come into every day.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know that's a really like slightly banal point, but I just they really capture an atmosphere, which the show starts to lose. But yeah, I just noticed it. I just thought it was a surprisingly realistic, quite a real setting, which I quite enjoyed.
So we also come across one of the character traits that I don't think we've really addressed about House is that he avoids difficult decisions. Like really difficult decisions about things he cares about. Like
you're referring to the Vogler
Vogler
dilemma that he's been put in?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does not handle it well. He ignores it. And he's not like messing with anyone. I think that he plays it off like he's messing with the people, like, oh, who am I going to fire? But I agree. I think it's more that he just does not want to make a decision. He is not good at change.
Yeah.
He's terrible at change.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when that change is being forced upon him.
Yeah, especially when the change has something to do with him, because he will happily make life and death, like, decisions about other patients who it doesn't matter. But yeah, when it comes to big things like this, and actually in the episode Control, where he had to make the decision about that woman's life, about whether or not he should lie to the committee.
Yeah.
Because that was something that he was taking a risk. Anything that involves him, he really like cannot make a decision on it. It's a very interesting character trait. And it definitely goes on to then explain why he is so stuck in his ways and how aversive he is
Mm.
to kind of dealing with anything real. It's quite interesting because you'd assume a person like this, I think a less interesting approach to this character would have been that he doesn't care about anything.
Mm.
Whereas he definitely cares about some things
He's
to the
not.
point where he is like shuts down.
He's not a. This is the thing that I think gets mixed up. He's an anarchist, not a nihilist. You know,
Yeah.
he doesn't think the only thing that matters is nothing, that we're all going to kind of dissolve into the void. He just is an anarchist. He likes it, the kind of fuel for his innovations, for his way of solving things, is by pushing at the boundaries and breaking the rules, or at least bending them until they're kind of pushed to their absolute limit.
Absolutely. But when the consequences of those come knocking, he like totally wants to ignore it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Which makes him a relatively cowardly person. And there's actually a great moment in the next episode where that comes to a head. This entire arc comes to a head, and like there's a moment of total inability to act.
Yeah.
Which we'll like talk about then. But it's just his aversion to stuff is a really interesting character trait that's starting to come out.
Mm. Also, the clinic case is, I think, hilariously overacted by the lady who is acting as someone who appreciates her curvature and recognizes that men may like that too, including her husband. I think it's way too overacted in my opinion, but maybe
it is slightly much. But I think it's overacted because they want to play it for laughs.
Yeah, okay.
So they kind of bring in this straw man or this straw woman who's like, you know, is really body positive.
Yeah.
Maybe this is when that was starting to really become a thing, because I've noticed like there are things now which are totally normal that we kind of accept that in-house, like it's like the writers have read it on the internet, like, oh my God, there are people that are really body positive. How funny is that?
Mm.
And then they like just have this character come in who just acts insane.
Mm.
Like anti-vaxxers, the anti-vaxxers appear like they're just really stupid. There are loads of stupid vegans, and but yeah, in this there's this woman who, I mean, the story with her, like, so this clinic episode is one of those multi-part ones which follows a story, and it's basically, just to sum it up, it's a woman who is she's very overweight, but she comes in, they think she's pregnant, turns out she has a tumor, but she doesn't want to lose weight for some reason. And it kind of turns out that actually the reason she doesn't want to lose weight is because she's just got a lot of men on the go outside of her husband who really like her because she's large, and it's kind of a fetish thing. And kind of, I guess, House helps her deal with that in order to get the tumor removed, because if she got the tumor removed, she'd be slimmer. And that would like fly in the face of her desire to not appear to be worried about her body and image. Not really a particularly deep clinic like side, but pretty funny. Like pretty. I know you're saying it's overacted. I just personally find that just quite funny.
Okay, but maybe I've kind of not appreciated the comedy of it as much. But I guess
I think this episode is weirdly funny. I think there's
yeah. I think the main thing to note is the main patient case is one about a person who wants to lose weight and thinks that's going to solve a lot of her problems socially.
Yeah, which it does.
And the
ironically,
the clinic case is basically someone who doesn't want to lose any weight because that will affect her chances of, attracting men. And it's that kind of it's opposites, right?
Yeah, it's about as complex as you can go with the theme in the running time.
Yeah. Also,
the theme
hilarious
of heaviness.
Hilarious bit where amphetamine psychosis sits in.
The bit where she is screaming in the hospital. But I have to say, like, stuff like that, this child actor is really good.
Yeah, she is really good. I'm sure I have her name in my little database.
It's Jennifer Stone or something, isn't it?
Yeah, you're not wrong. Quite funny, ironic that her name is Stone. Just to say.
Middle name Pound.
Ah, great.
So we're kind of, it's at this point where I'd say the it's a quite a standard medical case in the way that, like, you know, they do something, something happens, like, you know, like the patient pretty much continues to decline until they have this big eureka moment and they work it out. Um, but the eureka moment is kind of tied to her weight as well.
Mm-hmm.
So but in general at the moment the setup of that is that it's just a lot of the drama comes from, you know, the child is unhappy about the way, you know, she looks, and it's kind of how all of the doctors, like, it's very similar to histories. It's like the patient has an issue, they have like a bit of a prejudice to them, and it's how everyone deals with that. And it's pretty much Cameron doesn't really seem to have much involvement in it or an opinion, because
Well,
she's quite nice, so I assume she
funnily
doesn't
enough,
actually
she
care.
does. I mean, the back and forth between Chase and Cameron regarding the Chase's diagnosis that there are multiple blood clots from hypercoagulated blood because she's overweight. One of the blood clots went up to amygdala and then caused the uncontrollable rage. And she was arguing against that, saying, let's try and see through that, as seems very obvious, and it also doesn't fit that well.
Yeah, Chase is very focused on the weight throughout the whole thing.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, you're right. That's kind of the patient is like a pinpoint of how's everyone going to disagree, and it pretty much turns into Chase just thinks everything's because of the weight and finds her pretty disgusting, and everyone else is like, she's a child, cut her a break. And obesity is actually a bit of a disease and is a bit more complicated. There's a really funny bit where Foreman is like, have you read the latest research? And Chase is like, yes, I have, but what I haven't seen is a kid eating an apple or riding a bike, which is a completely ridiculous, like, downturn of that opinion. Like, they're both talking about scientific research, and Chase is like, I agree with the research, but kids don't ride bikes these days. He's like a fucking 70-year-old.
The other thing that's interesting is that I think you see the silence between House and Foreman is observing this altercation between Cameron and Chase, and essentially he thinks the tension is coming from the fact that House isn't firing anyone, and he's saying, well, don't treat us like lab rats, just fire us, fire one of us, get it over and done with, don't make the tension even worse. Mainly because I think he fears that it'll impact the performance of the team. You know, that they'll keep, because they're using the patient as a means to dissolve their anxieties, I think he sees.
Yeah, and House is like not being involved in it for the worst. Because usually he would shut it down, but there is something... I mean, it's possibly a bit forced. There's this, like... The fact that they're going to lose their jobs kind of then makes Chase act like a bit of an arsehole, which then kind of pushes everyone to act like an arsehole to Chase. And then this causes like this, internal team drama, which House would usually shut down, but this time seems to be like watching and not really enjoying, just not really interfering in.
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure if he's then using it as like a way to see who he should fire. But you don't ever get the sense that he's really making decisions based on that. He then just goes around and asks everyone who they would fire. So it's a bit strange. It's like, I think possibly like the whole Vogler thing is, it's forcing drama, the dilemma that they might lose their jobs, but it forces it in a very strong way.
Yeah.
Possibly too strong. But it does at least show like House's aversion to making decisions, which is very interesting. And then also shows the team's opinion on each other. Like, turns out Foreman does not really respect Chase that much. And and then Chase immediately turns on Cameron for something. So yeah, it makes the team turn against each other in interesting ways. And I think once the team focus away from the patient, then focus on each other, that's when it becomes interesting, because you find out what the team thinks of each other, which is interesting. I don't really care how much Chase hates fat kids, but I do care that Chase doesn't respect Cameron, and I do care that Foreman thinks that Chase kind of just wants to hang out and doesn't take the job seriously. Like, those are interesting things that you only really find out, the characters' internal thoughts about each other when pressure is applied. Because most of the time, if the characters are disagreeing, it's about medicine. You don't really see them disagreeing on a personal level, unless it's like a one-off debate, like in the MRI room before like someone goes apeshit and dies. If you agree with me,
yeah,
I
agree.
The drama's more interesting when the team focuses on itself.
Yeah. Also, we have the altercation between Vogler, or Vogler as you call him. I'm always going to bring that up.
We'll just call him Vogels.
Vogel. All right, Vogels. Vogels is introducing himself to Cameron, and he's kind of a mixture of menacing, ingratiating, and maybe a little bit psychotic, because he starts saying, "Oh, I don't feel guilty, but I don't feel bad about having to like fire one of you. I'm rich, but I am still human." And then he does like an insane grin, and you think, "Oh Lord."
Yeah, it's very unsettling. It's which, do you know what I think is totally the actor having fun with it.
Yeah,
I do think the actor Chi McBride is like hamming it up slightly, and you know what, I think it works, because the more conflicted you are about Vogler, the better. Like he is being nice. He is quite a charming man. He's also extremely creepy the way he smiles after things. It's like he doesn't quite know how to interact with people. So it's it's silly, it's over the top, but you know what? For what it is, I think it's nice to see the actor having fun with it.
yeah,
But it does also set up that Vogler is he is fishing for Cameron to gut on side, and it's kind of shows that Vogler is he's trying to initiate members of the team to turn on House.
yeah.
And then that will then create some drama of, who has already turned.
Yeah, but the thing is, someone's already turned, because they informed him about the transplant committee.
That's true.
So
which we learn by proxy, because we see him approach Cameron for the first time. We see him approach Foreman for the first time, but we do not see him approach Chase.
Yeah. So, but the thing is, it eliminates one of the potential people who have turned on him within the fellowship team.
So now it's not Cameron, which we suspected because of Cameron having feelings for House.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean, still, there's always a chance, but it just knocks one person out of the equation. Still could be Cap Wilson for all we know, at this stage.
Well, it's true, and it wouldn't, I mean, none of them are surprising. Like, a lot of these people, I mean, most of these people as well, like, you have to remember is that a lot of aside from House and Wilson being actual friends, like, no one is actually friends in this situation.
No.
So there's the loyalty comes from respect.
Yeah.
More than, like, I don't know, what would you call it, like love?
It comes from a kind of respect rather than from a kind of personal relationship.
Yeah.
They do have personal relationships with House, but they're framed within the work that they do. So it's really a work relationship rather than a personal one, I guess. But
yeah, I think Vogler even asked Cameron. She's like, he asks her like, "Oh, are you not turning against House because you have feelings for him?" And she like gets really annoyed at that, which is quite funny because actually he's completely read into what the situation is. But she does then say, "No, I just respect him." So it's that seems to be everyone's answer when they get asked, that they just respect House. No one says they like him, except Cameron does actually like him, but she kind of brushes that off as an insulting thing to assume, even though ironically it's true.
But she treats it as irrelevant to any of her choices as a professional at this point.
Yeah, very true.
That will change. The other interesting point to see is that the patient has admitted that she's been using diet pills as a means to try and lose weight, and they think the case is solved because the diet pills cause blood clots. And they also played the resolution music they usually do when there's a very emotional moment, so it feels like, oh, we're getting to the end of it. What for the rest of what's going to happen in the rest of the episode? And then it's like, they get us again. Things go bad.
It's a nice twist. I always like the way they show a bad thing's happening when a pager goes off and then slowly all the pages in the room start going off. It's a really nice little way of describing it. But once again, the girl's acting chops are put to the test as she's covered in necrotic sores, which she has to scream horribly over.
Yeah.
But it's but yeah, but as we said, in terms of the actual medicine, there's nothing like particularly shocking. Even the diet pills are a red herring.
Yeah.
But they're a good red herring, because I've always hated in shows when, and House does do it a few times, when they find a red herring and it's completely unrelated. But what the show is doing really well at the moment is finding red herrings that tell you a lot. So it's like in the last episode, Mob Rules, they found out about like the Chinese herbal medicine gum, right, that stopped him from smoking. And even though it turns out to be completely pointless, what it does then tell them is that, it then starts to reveal that the character is on like gay aphrodisiacs, so he might be a homosexual, which then bleeds into the character story. And in this, the diet pills once again are a red herring. They're not responsible, but they do then reveal that the mother wasn't giving her diet pills, that she was swiping diet pills for herself. And it kind of gives you a real like dramatic look into the self-loathing of this like child. It's very sad. So I really like the way the red herrings are actually being used for a purpose, because it would be very easy to have, oh, they're taking this drug which is killing them. Oh, actually it's not, and we've learnt nothing. Like every step, even when they're like not learning something about the medicine, they're learning something about the characters, which I really like.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like you're just watching things happen. It feels that at every moment, like there's growth. Even if that growth is for characters who we'll never see again, it's just nice to actually learn about people.
Yeah.
The patient stories are becoming slowly much more complicated and engrossing. And I really like that about the show at this point. It's really starting to strike it off.
Another key scene that happens is, I think House kind of stirs the pot a little bit between Chase and Cameron, because they're trying to figure out what caused the skin necrosis, and one was warfarin administered to the patient instead of heparin. Warfarin obviously thins the blood, whereas heparin, I think, may do the opposite. I'm not not sure. Basically, House has said, "Oh, Chase, did you see Cameron administer the heparin and made sure it wasn't warfarin?" And Cameron was like, "I didn't really see it," and kind of threw Cameron under the bus a little bit. And then they have a very intense altercation. And then all of a sudden, House comes out and says, "Stop worrying about your asses and try and worry about the patient's ass or life, I guess."
Yeah, it's
and it's just like, what? But a moment ago, you were kind of stirring up that antagonism and observing that antagonism as a means to try and see if you can make a decision about who you're going to fire. So what?
Yeah, it's really strange. Well, he does the same thing with Foreman and Chase when they're having an argument, but it doesn't really lead anywhere. But then he kind of does it with Chase and Cameron. And maybe he doesn't think Cameron's going to do anything, but Cameron like really goes in. Like, this is the first time we've seen Cameron angry. Like, they leave the office and she turns to Chase. She's like, "Don't think that I'm just going to give up." And then House comes out and shouts at them, which kind of feels like he's sort of putting out the fire that he made.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's I think maybe he wasn't expecting Cameron to act like that.
Well, I think, yeah, maybe, but still, I don't know if it was like a bit of a moment of madness with the writers or not, or do you think it operates within the internal logic of the story? I'm not sure.
I think it does, because I would totally agree that it would be a bit weird that House was stirring it up. But that actually does lead on to then House kind of accept, like when he accuses Cameron then of like messing up the initial Warfarin administration, he then sticks with that as his theory for the rest of the episode. I mean, he does then go around and he talks to Cameron and he asks her, like, who she'd fire. And but he he never, like, he's literally standing outside the patient's room at the end just being like, oh my god, maybe it wasn't the Warfarin thing. Like, it's almost like he accepts that as the truth, even though it seems like it's been set up for him to stir the pot. But I actually kind of think he believes it, because he's out of ideas, possibly.
Yeah. I think the other thing to take into consideration is the fact that Cameron gives him the solution to offer Vogler, or Vogels, as we now call him. We'll take the pay cut. We'll cut our salaries by 18% or whatever percentage it was. And yeah, it'll be fine. It will be profitable. But he stares out the window, and then it's a complete change, complete volte face. And he reveals his hand to House.
Yeah, which is a great twist on the character's motivations. It makes it that this is not business, this is personal.
I want to make you my bitch.
Pretty much. Which is good. I mean, it makes Vogler more interesting. Did you find it interesting? I've been thinking on this. Did you find it interesting that House doesn't ask Chase who he would fire, and then later actually picks Chase as the person to be fired, which Vogler doesn't allow to happen because Vogler has gone to every member of the team to be the rat, and Chase is the only one who's turned.
Yeah.
So Vogler can't fire Chase because even though he tried to get a replacement rat, he couldn't. Chase is the only one who's actually taken the bait, so Chase can't go. That gives Chase some immunity. So, do you think it's a bit weird that House doesn't ask Chase who he would fire? And do you think that House kind of knows Chase might be the rat? Because the way that House selects Chase to be fired, in turn, like, saves everyone. And I never know if that's a strategic play on House's part or kind of just a happy accident.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that? Because it really boggled me, and I don't really know how to read it, but it seems very on purpose. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts.
I seriously don't know. You've brought up a very good point, which is, did he figure it out or not? Was it the aggression that gave it away, or what? Was it the brashness of his solutions to things that gave it away or not? I don't know. He's acting completely. He's erratic in this.
Yeah.
Completely prejudicial towards the patient, and creates a lot of the tension between Cameron and himself. I just don't know.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I'm glad that you noticed it as well. Like, because it seems like it's an accident, but that seems a bit lazy that House would accidentally pick Chase. But because maybe it just turns out, but maybe, I mean, it could work because, Vogler might only be able to get through to Chase because Chase is like the more flippant one with less backbone. And that's why House also chooses him, because he like respects Cameron and Foreman more. So it kind of just turns out that because it's actually Chase's kind of like lack of backbone, which both saves him and condemns him.
Yeah.
So maybe it's kind of an accident that makes sense why it would happen. But at the same time, it seems a bit too convenient. And also the fact that House never has a conversation with him about who he wants to fire. Because like Chase, as you say, is being erratic. He's arguing with everyone. Like, House could probably assume that Cameron and Foreman want to get rid of Chase when they're both screaming at him in the office.
Yeah. But also the fact that Cameron and Foreman both approach House and challenge House about things, especially with regards to the firing stuff as well. And Chase isn't shown to actually approach House at all.
Oh, you're right. Because, House doesn't actually approach anyone. They both approach him.
Well, he does approach Cameron at first because he goes to the lab.
Oh, true.
But they both approach him later. Chase is completely non-existent. Either he's avoiding House because he knows that if he gives an inkling away in person, that maybe he'll get found out. But actually, by not showing up at all, maybe that's the telltale sign. I don't know. We're really clutching at these are just conjectures.
Yeah, this is one of these rare episodes where it's actually quite hard to determine character motivations, and I don't think for good reasons. I think it is left very vague, and it's just that one missing link. Because I think everything else in this episode is pretty spot on. Like, there's a lot of character dynamics going on. We learn a lot about characters subtly. We kind of learn what Cameron does when she gets pushed into a wall. We learn like what Foreman feels about Chase. We learn what Cameron feels about Chase. We learn what Cameron feels about House. We kind of learn how House faces dilemmas. And we also learn that, Chase hates fat people, which is a totally meaningless thing to learn. But it's like, we learn a lot, but it's this most important thing when, because I said last time, I said the interesting thing about that cliffhanger of who's going to get fired is how House comes to that decision and kind of gets away with it. And we don't really see that. We kind of get why House comes to that decision, but then it all kind of works out and it feels like a slight cheat because it doesn't feel like House thought his way through it. It just kind of feels like he kind of stepped into the right solution.
Yeah.
Unless there's like some serious meta logic going on that he's like using.
Yeah, like he's thinking outside of the box squared.
Yeah, but so outside the box that it's like not even conveyed in the show, which I think is always quite annoying.
Yeah, given how watertight things usually are on the show.
Yeah.
Because it really does logically play out everything that it does in such a meticulous way. I think the other interesting thing about it is that Cameron and Foreman both proposed two different solutions when they approach House. So Cameron was approached by House first in this whole discussion, not after Foreman, and she kind of says like, whatever, no one, do the pay cut. Pay cut fails. She then approaches House and says, I'll quit then. Maybe that'll do it. Foreman and Cameron come up with two proposals. Foreman just says, just get on with it. Fire
specifically
Chase
get
and be
rid
done
of
with
Chase.
Yeah. Cameron says, I'll quit. If that makes it easier for everyone. Chase, nothing. Nada. Nada. Not even really concerned with the issue. Because he knows he can't be fired, in a way, because he's in cahoots with Vogels.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's interesting. Each team member has a different approach, and it's very fitting to each one. Like Foreman, as you say, is get on with it, fire this person. Chase doesn't do anything because he's safe, and Cameron goes through too. She's just grasping at straws, like, let's take a pay cut. Oh, I'll quit. And it's just very funny, like this really self-sacrificial method that she uses.
It kind of reminds me of Solomon and the Baby.
Yeah.
So just, split the baby, do a pay cut. Then she goes, oh, just give the baby over to her if we can't. If someone has to suffer, it will be me.
Yeah.
And House is kind of playing this Solomon-esque character, but with none of the wisdom of Solomon.
None of the wisdom.
He's just like, I'm paralyzed by choice. It's like if you put Hamlet in Solomon's chair and made him make a decision, which is like, I don't know. I am racked by indecision and trying to find an easy way out.
What I quite like about coming to the finale of this, because Cameron sort of disappears. She's not really involved. I think she takes the day off because I think she's too stressed about the whole situation. But there's a moment where, like, it's the very end. They need to come up with the decision. And I quite like that there isn't like a eureka moment in this. It's not like House is like, on the toilet and like thinks of something. he's just standing outside the room and he's like desperate. He turns to the team and is like, right, okay, what if we're wrong? Let's randomly come up with some stuff. And they go into that kind of Socratic method way of thinking, which that Socratic method way of thinking, which is like really nice to see. They kind of just like stand there for like a minute, and House is just saying, I don't care if it makes sense, just say it. And they kind of just throw out all of these crazy ideas, and then they come to a decision. And it's a very organic way to solve the case. It's like that kind of last minute pressure and kind of grasping at straws is what gets them through it. And I quite like that. Feels like someone solving the case through thought and collaboration.
Yeah.
Rather than like just a eureka moment. But it's a nice thing because the show has been using eureka moments, but that was a nice alternative. And I think it's totally valid. Like maybe it's a bit quick, but it's like.
But sometimes
fine.
That's really good because you get that kind of high
come up with ideas.
that high paced exchange of ideas about what to do, and because the stakes high, because they might have to remove her breasts. Why did they have to remove her breasts again? Is it?
I think. I forget why. I think it's because they think it's cancer.
Yeah. And then they basically, okay, let's like brainstorm. Let's try and figure a way through this, and then spit out the things. And House is right. It is Cushing's disease, and it's a calcified There's a tumor in the middle of her brain. They do some
in the pituitary
gland, I guess. Is it the pituitary? Yeah. Okay. And then they do some pretty nice surgery on her, where they just cut her lip open, shove a tube, and go.
Shove a tube in her brain.
Yeah, put a tube in her brain, cut the bits and pieces of the tumor and take them out.
But it's there is quite a nice moment. I don't know why I like this, but it's the bit where Foreman is explaining the surgery and how it's going to work and how dangerous it is, and the mother just goes, "Oh my god!" Like I don't know. I don't know who wrote this episode, but it seems like the dialogue is very naturalistic in this. It's very well written. It feels like that the mother doesn't really ask any questions. She's just there going, "Oh God,"
Well,
which I feel like how most people would actually respond when being told treatment like that.
Yeah, and they're being overwhelmed by the narrative, because that's what Foreman is doing, is telling the story of how this will happen. Because she needs to convince her and say, "All right, this is what can happen. This what will happen if we're right." And the surgery is successful. Mother is very grateful.
And the girl loses weight, and then she's friends with everyone at school.
Yeah,
which would almost destroy the moral that you can be how you want to be and you'll be fine. But actually she does lose weight and then makes the friends that she thought she'd get. But then the mom throws in, she was always beautiful. It's like, thanks, Mom. Good save on that moral lesson there.
Good save.
It was a funny one because, like, actually, I guess it's quite cynical in that the girl wanted to be thin because she thought it would make her life better. Everyone's like, nah, don't worry about that. And then she does get thin and her life is better. And it's quite funny. It's quite realistic. Like, yeah, like it probably would improve your life because all the kids are bullying her because she's fat. So, but it's nice that the mom throws that in there as kind of a little bit of a sentimental thing. Like, oh, at least you were always perfect to me. And it's like, thanks, Mom. But, the show's cynicism has taken over this one.
Yeah. Definitely.
The mom tries to basically slide in the equivalent of the kids running into the hospital room in the pilot. It's like she just pops it in. She's like, here's a little drop of sentimentality, but not too much.
All it needed was a soft fade of Chase's face grinning from ear to ear.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, all right, folks.
Well,
kind of, because it was a clinical issue.
Well, I don't know, guys. I feel like we've really gotten to the bottom of that. It's the episode basically ends with House can't fire Chase. What's he going to do? And we've seen all of the fallout of the characters. So, what did you think of the episode?
Hey, some funky music too.
Ends with some funky music. You need to. Great soundtrack on the House MD OST. I listen to it often.
Oh,
good
wow.
Range of music, very eclectic.
Cameron's preparing to leave. She's preparing a little CV, a little bit bland in my opinion, but there you go.
Very bland, not much design. So What are your thoughts on the episode overall?
Um, it was pretty
Your
good.
differential diagnosis.
Terminal, always, because it always ends. Every episode ends. No, it was really interesting in the sense of that it focused on, like, in terms of the fellows, it really did focus on their conflicts and the who did what, who done it element to it. We find out that Chase is the rat. The rat.
You rat bastard.
And it also, we get to see Voggles reveal his true motives, his true colours when it comes to House. He really does show that it's about control, it's about making House subservient to his will. House ain't playing ball for now.
Absolutely. I agree. I think this is very much an episode about people showing their true colours. Whether that's Vogler or House's indecision, like Vogler's control, or the team's kind of dislikes about each other and, like, you know, how they resolve problems. Like, Former wants to get rid of Chase, but Cameron's like, we can all take a pay cut and, or I can sacrifice myself. Just a nice little, like, bit of pressure applied. The situation is resolved and we learn something about all the characters. And then the patient story is just solid, engrossing, like, great little narrative. Lots of good stuff.
Yeah, and I guess the most silent, but also the most loud character in all of this is Chase. Loud in his obnoxiousness and callousness towards overweight people.
Yeah.
Quiet in his role as the rat. That rat. That Aussie rat. How dare he? I guess the other thing to go about is you see Cuddy has kind of accepted that Voggles is going to be in charge. She's argued the case, but now she has to enforce what Voggles wants.
Yeah, you do slowly start to see her lose control of it. Like, even when House brings about the budget cuts thing, she's like, fantastic, and then totally gets overshadowed and doesn't really have anything to say. It's she definitely loses control of the situation, which is something that's explored more in the next episode when House and Cuddy actually get a chance to discuss it.
Yeah, and Wilson just interjects here and there. Not yet, really. Not yet. Not seen much from him in the Voggles quintology.
No, we saw him with the heart transplant. He's kind of there for the big moral decisions that House makes, but which is fine. That's his part to play. But he's not breaking the bank with what he's got to offer.
Yeah. Well,
I think at the moment he's kind of getting by on how. I think he's getting by on just like how charismatic and like good to watch Robert Sean Leonard is.
Yeah.
Like, he's just playing this kind of jokey, easygoing, like, good guy very well.
Yeah.
I think that's about all we can expect from Wilson for now.
For now.
Well, thank you, Gaz.
Always a pleasure. Never a chore.
You've been there to discuss Vogler Part 3, The Return of Vogler, and what's going to happen next week. Obviously, we all know because we've all seen the show, hopefully. But I can't wait to get to it and discuss as the Vogler Chronicles starts winding down.
Indeed. Voggles is indeed a role model for how to shoehorn a pointless character into a series.
Absolutely. Any aspiring writers there who one day can't wait to be ridden and have their work sabotaged by the corporate machine, this is how you get your work sabotaged and play it off well. So thank you very much for everyone for listening. As always, we're on every platform, so if there's a review system on the platform you're watching, then we'd appreciate if you could leave a review, good or bad. That's what reviews are for. Say how you feel. And as always, if you have any thoughts to share, or you just want to get updates, then we've also got our Twitter and Facebook, which is at HouseMDcast, and just search for Differential Diagnosis, a HouseMD podcast in Facebook. But until then, we'll be back same time next week for to explore Season 1, Episode 17, Role Model, or the Obama Premonition,
Oh,
which whichever way you want to think of that episode. So anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.